Hello and welcome back to the Birdcage. I'm Jack Kenna, and today we will be doing a Creighton weekly recap. Usually I'm doing games. This week was just really chaotic. So I have spared a few minutes here to talk about the Blue Jays. It is Saturday, February 15th. It has been exactly 1 week since the Creighton Blue Jays took down Marquette at home in Omaha at the CHI Health Center. That game a 77-67 win against number 11 Marquette. A win that bolstered us. I say us like I'm a part of the team. A win that bolstered Creighton into the AP top 25. I felt like they were a little disrespected. They were ranked 24th in the country heading into UConn. But before we move on to that, let's talk about this Marquette game. Now, this Marquette game, it was really, really fun to watch. I wasn't able to watch it live. I had to watch the entire thing back. Thank goodness YouTube TV allows you to record stuff, but it was a fun watch. It really, really was. We got to see Cam Jones, Ryan Kolkbrenner, two of the favorites to win Big East Player of the Year, really battle and fight and go at it for 40 minutes. Stephen Ashworth, I thought, was super, super impressive for Creighton. He had 5 turnovers, but the entire team only turned the ball over 8 times. So that's something that you have to be okay with when you're playing against a team as dominant defensively as Marquette is. And what you will see is the next few games Creighton played against UConn and upcoming here tomorrow against St. John's are going to be equally as tough defensively. Stephen Ashworth played terrific. Really, he had 6 3-pointers. He was 7 of 11 from the field. He couldn't do no wrong except those turnovers. He had 22 points, played 40 minutes. Terrific, doing things Stephen Ashworth normally does. Ryan Kolkbrenner, 8 for 9 from the field, 7 rebounds, 19 points, 4 blocks. He's the defensive player of the year. And that's why he was the midseason. He was selected to be on the midseason Wooden team. That's why he's getting the accolades that he has gotten in the past. He's that good. He really is. And number 11 should never be worn by another Creighton Blue Jay ever again. I would just remember watching Marcus. I was watching Marcus Zagorowski the other day, and man, to go from Marcus Zagorowski to Ryan Kolkbrenner, number 11 should quite literally never be worn again. Jemiah Neal, stretches of that Marquette game, was the dude. He was dealing with foul trouble a lot, and that was something that kind of hurt Creighton at times. But Jemiah Neal's readiness to go when he was then subbed back in just paid dividends. He has really transformed into the kind of transfer Coach McDermott thought he could be. Because a lot of Creighton fans were really excited about the athleticism of Jemiah Neal coming into the year, but we were really confused because he wasn't a shooter at Arizona State. He was rarely a guard, right? He wasn't really a pass first player, wasn't the greatest defensive player. He had some great highlights. He could definitely get some cool dunks in transition. He wasn't a great shooter. So we were kind of wondering how is Jemiah Neal going to really fit into this offense, and it took him time. It took him time. When Pop went out, his role changed again. He had a role going into the year, playing with Isaacs and playing with Ashworth and Culk and kind of being that fourth dude. And then when Pop went out, it was Jemiah Neal, your role switches. Now you have to be that third scorer. You have to be that third guy. And he has done a terrific, terrific job. And we'll talk more about Jemiah later in the game or later in this episode. But it was just one of those games where you're just like, yeah, yeah, playing playing top quality basketball right now. Jason Green, great game against Marquette. Followed it up with a good game against UConn, made some big plays. He's one heck of a defender. He can guard the ball. He can play some defense. Jemiah, or not Jemiah Neal, Jason Green is one of those glue guys. He's a glue guy, and he'll never score a whole bunch of points in a game, But man, when he's on the court, you can tell he's on the court. And he has been a blessing in disguise since he has been issued into the starting lineup. The team looks so much better. And Fedor only had 3 points, or Fedor had 6 points, excuse me. He made a layup towards the end of that game, and then he went 4 for 4 from the free throw line. He's showing, Mac is showing his trust in Fedor. He's playing, even if it's not a whole lot of minutes, he only has 12 minutes logged here against Marquette, but he was playing down the stretch in big, big minutes in a game that can quite literally determine if you're a one or a two or a three seed come Big East tournament play. So it's just showing that his trust in Fedor. Trout didn't have the greatest game. He went 1 for 6 from the field, finished with 5 points, made a three-pointer, and then two free throws. But it was one of those where he was so hot, you knew he was going to cool off eventually, and kind of did there. I thought Trout's looks were really good. They just didn't fall. And you can't really hate too much on those. When you look at Marquette, Creighton did a phenomenal job playing into their game plan. They forced Stevie Mitchell to take 10 threes. Stevie Mitchell to take 10 threes. And percentage wise, he's good, but that is the same recipe that Creighton used the last time they played Marquette, and it worked. They were able to get exactly what they wanted to out of that, forcing Stevie Mitchell, a guy who rarely shoots this much from behind the arc, to take 10 of them is a winning recipe. He made two early and then cooled off quite a bit. So it was one of those where it was nice to see that. Now Stevie Mitchell obviously still finished double figures, was able to impact the game a lot, pressuring Ashworth, pressuring Neal, pressuring the ball pretty much. But they did such a good job. Ben Gold, unplayable. Couldn't play him. It was the perfect recipe to beat Marquette. Ben Gold made some shots in their first meeting, made some shots that he just didn't really necessarily get in the second. And that was what was important was Ben Gold took one shot, 0 for 1 from the field, only two rebounds from the starting center for Marquette. Ryan Kolkbrenner dominated that matchup. He dominated whoever was on him against Marquette. He was a big time player in that game. Cam Jones is Cam Jones. Right, he's gonna get his. He's that special of a player. He's that good. He finished with 27 and 6 assists, one turnover. He's one heck of a player. 3 of 7 from the 3 point line, 11 of 19 from the field. It was one of those games where Cam Jones is gonna get his, but you have to limit everyone else. And that's the perfect transition to the next game. Because Creighton took on UConn on Tuesday. In a game was the complete opposite, you can say. A UConn player put up all of their points, and UConn got the win. Liam McNeely had 38 points against the Creighton Bluejays in a 70-66 loss. It was one of the greatest individual performances I have seen from an opponent. Eric Dixon always has Creighton's number. You can kind of point to any of those games that you would like. Marcus Howard put up 50 against Creighton, and then Liam McNeely, 38. And those are kind of the performances that are coming to mind since I've kind of been able to remember iconic Creighton games. He's special. He was a special player. He was a special player to start the year, got hurt, and I think he showed everybody why he is a lottery pick in the NBA draft, why he could potentially be a top 10 pick in the NBA draft. He went 5 of 10 from the 3 point line. I think 4 of those were in the second half. I don't know for sure, but I think 4 of those I remember being in the second half. Liam McNeely. I was really upset after the game because I feel like this is a down UConn team. And this is a Creighton team that's hot at the right moment. I thought Creighton had every chance in the world to win this game. I mean, they were up 15-16 at one point, maybe 17. Can't really remember right now, but went into halftime with an 8 point advantage. And they lost by 4. So they got outscored by 12 in the second half. And it was one of those games where you almost have to tip your cap to Dan Hurley and to Liam McNeely. And we'll talk about the Dan Hurley antics later, but it was one of those games where you're just like, wow, wow. I'm a big believer in one player can't beat you, but two or three can. That is quite literally all UConn had. They had McNeely with 38. They had Solo Ball with 11 and Caravan with 10. And Caravan had a bad game. Caravan did 0 of 7 from the field, or 0 of 7 from the 3-point line, 5 of 14 from the field. Solo Ball, not much better, 4 of 15. So that's actually worse. But those two guys struggled. They struggled. They were kind of hunting their own shots and they couldn't really get some stuff to fall. McNeely could. He could, and the three of those guys pretty much wielded, or yeah, wielded. I don't know if that's a word. Those guys carried UConn to this win in a game where the second half points were hard to come by for Creighton. UConn defended the ball at an extremely, extremely high level, and they were able to cause havoc in that second half. Creighton only scored 29 second half points, as many as UConn did in the first half. So it was kind of a reverse half there by the Bluejays because we saw UConn struggle in the first, Creighton struggled in the second. UConn walks out of Omaha with their first win, and you're upset because that's a chance right there to get even and get another huge win against one of the top four teams in the Big East. They actually lost tonight to Seton Hall in overtime. Yeah, how good is that UConn team? We'll be scratching our heads looking for an answer to that question. But you figured that this game would be a huge opportunity, but you took the one at Marquette, and so you just didn't know what kind of the feeling would be around this game. I feel like if Creighton dropped the Marquette game, this game would mean a little more. You can't go 0-2 in this home stretch against Marquette and UConn. But at the end of the day, it didn't roll their way. It didn't roll their way. They were unable to get a win there at home, but UConn had a good game plan. UConn's a good basketball team, and it was just one of those where you really wanted to win. But I don't know if it was Cray Takes or if it was Jay's Classic on Twitter. They were like, you got to tip your cap because Liam McNeely did something a lot of UConn players in the past failed to do, and that was obliterate Creighton on their home floor by just knocking down shots. He was excellent at drawing fouls. Whenever he would get Stephen Ashworth up on him, it was a guaranteed free throw attempts for Liam McNeely. He was special. He was special on Tuesday, and he's one heck of a player. He didn't have nearly the night he had in Omaha tonight against Seton Hall, but it was just one of those games for Liam McNeely. The hoop was double the size, and you could see he was confident. Creighton, on the other hand, not its best game. Not its best game. Ashworth, 1 of 8 from the field. That's what everyone's going to talk about. 1 of 8 from the field, 0 of 5 from threes. His 3-point streak ends. Consecutive games with a made 3-pointer. That streak ends. 11 of his 13 points came at the charity stripe. So, yeah, it was a tough game for Stephen Ashworth, but he got nothing easy. Absolutely nothing easy. Solo ball, whether it was Solo Ball, whether it was McNeely, whether it was Diarra. Diarra didn't play a whole bunch that game, but whoever was on him, made his life tough. Jalen Stewart. It was impressive. Impressive defense from UConn because you figured if Stephen Ashworth and Ryan Kolkbrenner got to around 20 points, you weren't going to win that game. Ryan Kolkbrenner finished with 13 as well. Defensively, he was solid. Offensively, 13 points, 9 rebounds. You would love to see a little more from the big fella, but it was tough to get him the ball. And it was tougher to get him the ball when Alex Caravan was on him. At one point, UConn's big man Samson Johnson and Terrence Reed both had 4 fouls. I guess they finished the night with 4 fouls as well. I don't think any of them fouled out. But it was one of those where you're just like, really? You have one of the best centers in college basketball and you can't give him the ball. when he's guarded by Alex Caravan, who is 3, 4 inches shorter than him. But it was great defense by UConn and more impressive than even Caravan man marking Kolkbrenner was the pressure on the ball pressure. When there's good ball pressure, it's hard to force those passes inside. And UConn was really, really good at that in the second half, and especially when Samson Johnson and Terrace Reed weren't on the floor. I was a little disappointed that Creighton couldn't give him the ball. I was. And looking back at it, you got to figure out a way to get Kolkbrenner involved, especially when Caravan's on him. But it was hard. It was really, really hard. And I understand. I, I'm accepting the result because you know what this Creighton team can do when they play their best basketball. And quite frankly, that just wasn't their best basketball. And we'll go into detail more about why this game's not nearly as important. But when you just kind of look at everyone's impact on the floor, Fedor only 8 minutes. The last two games he's combined for 20, but Fedor took the most important shot of the game. It was a tie game with about a minute left. Fedor took a corner three and it was way short, well short, but it was one of those where it's like Fedor's playing down the stretch in crunch time. It's McDermott trusts him. I listened to the Jays Classic podcast and they were talking about how it was a little odd. It was a little odd how Fedor only played 8 minutes and majority of those came towards the end of the game. But it's impressive what he's able to do in a short amount of time, and you just have to wonder if McDermott really does trust him to put him in more towards these late situations, just because what he brings to the floor. He's a really terrific driver of the basketball. He drives the ball really well. He can shoot it. He made an extremely clutch three-pointer in that game. But it was just one of those games where, yeah, you wish stuff just went a little differently in that game. Isaac Trout contributed with three. Mason Miller had some free throws. It was overall a disappointing result from the Creighton Blue Jays, but you can't hang your head too much because they're going into New York with a chance to take the lead in the Big East standings. St. John's after the night after UConn upset Creighton at home, St. John's had to travel to Philadelphia to take on Villanova. And Villanova beat them, defended their home court, beat St. John's. And so now Creighton's traveling to New York, not only for a series sweep against the Johnnies, but for a chance to take the number one spot in the Big East standings. And this is an extremely talented St. John's team. An extremely talented St. John's team. A St. John's team that guards better than Marquette, better than UConn. This team is one of the best teams in the country guarding the ball. However, what they can't do is shoot. This team's not necessarily the greatest three-point shooting team. As a team, they shoot under 30% from three. It's impressive because they're really, really good, but they have a glaring weakness. And so you're just like, I don't know. We'll see what they can do, and that's what makes this game interesting is they're not going to stroke it from three. They're not. They're going to try to get to the cup. They're going to pull up from mid-range and try to guard the mid-range or try to knock down the mid-range jump shots. But it's just something super impressive because Rick Pitino's just found a way. All year he's found a way. There's a glaring weakness on his team, and St. John's is damn good. They have two Big East losses now, and one's on the road at the CHI against Creighton, and the other one's on the road against Nova. They're not bad losses, but this is an opportunity for Creighton to get in the win column, a huge win, huge road win for the Blue Jays. They've gotten a few good road wins. Villanova, they were lucky. They squeaked out of Philadelphia with a win, probably an undeserved win. I remember me and Alex kind of talked about how that win was a little fluky. But then they get a huge road win at UConn. And I know that was before the Nova game, but that's when I knew that this team could win big games and win meaningful games and play meaningful games come February and March is just because they were able to go in there and take care of business in a few of those games and environments, and they have an opportunity to do that again today. Because, like I said, what's Creighton do really well? They defensive rebound really, really well. They guard the rim at a high level. They have one of the best big men in the country at guarding the rim. They have the Big East Defensive Player of the Year. They could have the National Defensive Player of the Year on their squad in Kolkbrenner. So this is going to be a fun, interesting game. I'm excited because this could mean something for the Big East standings, and it will mean something. Creighton's a game back. If they win this game, they're technically tied, but Creighton would have the tiebreaker sweeping St. John's. If not, St. John's is 2 games ahead. And then you're in a predicament where it's like, okay, let's buckle down and get some wins because you can't really lose a whole bunch more. You can't. I think Creighton is comfortably a tournament team. But if they want to make a run for the number one seed in the tournament and get their second Big East Conference championship, they're going to have to do something special here in the next 3 weeks. RJ Lewis Jr. is one of the best players in all of the Big 12. He averages 17 points per game. He's a mid-range. He's a dude from the mid-range. He can knock down shots. He can knock down clutch shots. He is really a factor. Zuby Ejiofor, Ryan Kolkbrenner's matchup tomorrow is a beast on the boards. He averages 8 rebounds a game. He averages 14 points. He's dominant. It's going to be hard to keep Zuby Ejiofor off the glass, but Creighton will need to do it if they want to get a huge win. Kadari Richmond transfers from Seton Hall, one of Rick Pitino's better players over the last few weeks. He's coming into his own there. For a little bit, it looked like he was really, really struggling, but he's kind of finding his footing now. He has one of the best mid-range jump shots in all of college basketball, and this team can just flat out attack the rim. Now, they're not the greatest shooters. They're not. Their best three-point shooter right now is Davion Smith. He shoots the ball 37%. 37% is their best guy. They have Brady Dunlap, who doesn't score a whole bunch. He doesn't average a whole bunch of points, but he can shoot it at 37.5%. But you just wonder how how important really is that because he's not doing a whole bunch in the scoring column. He only averages about 6 points a game. So this is going to be a fun game. It's going to be a fun game for the Creighton Bluejays, a game where if they can really win, they're in the driver's seat for the Big East. They would be done playing Marquette, UConn, St. John's. So then you got to win the games you got to win. That's extremely possible with the remaining schedule. This will be an important game tomorrow. I think Creighton will come out to play. I don't know if that necessarily means that they're going to be able to get the win, but I think Creighton can come out ready to play and ready to compete, and that's what kind of excites me. I don't think the Blue Jays win. I don't. I'm going to remain optimistic in my mind, but I know New York's a tough place to play. They're playing at the Garden. Last year, Patino wore an all-white suit, and Creighton got their butts kicked. I don't necessarily think their butts will be kicked because I think a St. John's team that can't really shoot the ball will have a very tough time blowing Creighton out. But I wonder how Creighton is going to guard the ball, going to guard ball screens. How are they going to make life difficult for St. John's? It's important that Creighton takes care of the ball. And it's important that Creighton can get defensive rebounds. If those two things happen, we could be looking at a very happy plane ride back to Nebraska. If not, you got to buckle down. You got to lock in because it doesn't get any easier. It does not get any easier. I I don't think the Creighton Blue Jays get a win. I think it's close, but I think it is a 60 St. John's win in the Garden. I'm Jack Kenna, and I will be back Hopefully, me and Alex. If not, I will be back to do a recap for Creighton St. John's. That game is tomorrow at I think 2 p.m. Creighton St. John's tomorrow. Big East, number one seed. It's on the line. I will see you guys later.